Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the almost famous sideshow known as KOR After Hours, where we like to discuss the weird, wacky, and sometimes non-believable things that happen here on this planet that we call Earth. I'm Jaster Layanwin. I'll be your host tonight as we're pulling into the port of Jakarta here in Indonesia. And here, coming along with me on this journey tonight, is Kazari Iwakura and Kaiden. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing alright. God damn it, I thought we just got back from Asia. Why'd we have to turn around? I like Lake Erie.
We're in Asia?
Yeah, kinda.
Well, actually, no, not really. We're actually in,
I would call it like Northern Australia at this point.
we're in the sea region, southeastern Asia.
Oceania, I think is
Yeah,
what it's called.
Oceania, as some people call it, yeah.
At least that's what Final Fantasy servers call it, right? So, why are we
I don't
here,
know.
guys?
I'm terrible with geography.
I don't know, you're the captain. Why are we here?
Because I got a big old wild hair up my ass to discuss one of my favorite subgroups of cryptids known to mankind.
Ah, boy, here we go about Mount Forest Giants again.
No. My favorite flying cryptids.
Oh.
Bat cryptids.
Oh,
Okay?
you have my attention.
So, where we're at right now is home to probably one of the more famous flying cryptids in mankind. It's known as the Ahool. Okay? Now, anybody in the group here that played Pokemon with me knows that my best Noivern that I've got is named Ahool. And this is the namesake, okay? Right here in Indonesia. But we also got a couple other cryptids we're going to bring in because, like I said, bat cryptids are one of my favorite things. Now, let's go ahead and break it down for y'all. What is the Ahool? Okay? It is known as a very large bat-like cryptid with wingspans claimed at anywhere from 12 to 40 feet. And they stand, and this is the weird part, like I've seen reports of 3 to 4 foot tall, and I've seen reports of 10 foot tall when they stand on their hind legs. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, Batsquatch. Okay, like let's be honest here. Like that's a big bat. All right. Now, there's a lot of interesting things that go on all across the world, but why is this one so cool to me? Because I think there is a possibility that this is a real deal animal, and not for the reasons people think, right? But we'll get into that. So, I know like what we're going to do tonight is me and Kaz have got the notes, and we're basically conversing with Kaiden over here, getting our stuff together, and he's going to try and shoot holes into what we got going on, right? That's classic KOR live behavior, at least in the last couple episodes. So, let's go ahead and get into it now. So, like I done said, the Ahool is basically big-ass bat, right? Mm-hmm. This thing has gotten a sighting range that is nuts to me. If you think like Bigfoot being all over North America's wild, how about a giant bat somehow getting to almost every freaking island in Oceania? Like it's got a wide range, like everywhere from Australia all the way to Papua New Guinea into Indonesia and beyond. Okay, so sightings of large bats that are bigger than what they know in that area has gone on for a very long time. Now, to put it into perspective, the biggest bat known to science in the area is the golden fox bat of the Philippines. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys probably have seen this bat without knowing the species name, but you know, like those, like on the internet when the guy's got the wingspan recording for a bat, and he's basically got his arms all the way stretched out, and it's kind of like this brownish, orangey, golden looking bat.
Yeah,
that's it. That is a golden fox. Mm-hmm. And now, there's been reports of Ahools attacking people, livestock, all that other kind of stuff. However, it is important to note that pretty much every large bat species that we know of is pretty much exclusively a herbivore or a light omnivore. And a lot of the local legends that I'd seen talk about these things fishing. Like, this is a bat that apparently fishes like a freaking bald eagle. Okay? It'll sit there and wait along, like, rivers, lakes, basins, waterfalls, and it'll wait for something to come up to the surface for it to swoop in and catch it. However, I will also say that I can't find any reported, corroborated claims that this thing attacks humans. So this is also one of the more docile cryptids that we know.
So what is it? Just eat fruit? Does it suck on cow blood?
People think that it
What's
eats
the
fish.
deal with Ahool?
Right.
What's the deal with Ahool?
And like I said, I think most people think it eats on fish. Now, like,
Is that common in actual bats?
No, it is not. Carnivorous bats are hard to find. I think the vampire bat's the only one that, like, is parasitic.
It's not really a parasite per se. It just pokes a hole in.
It basically just nibbles through skin just enough, and then it just kind of the blood.
Yeah,
it's like Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
Yeah,
Dracula.
Yeah. Dragon don't suck. Dragon lick. It's that's actually what the vampire bat is like. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll come up to like a sleeping chick or something, bite a hole in its foot, spit in the hole to because its spit will stop the blood from coagulating, and then it just licks it up until it's full and flies off.
Yep.
That's
but
crazy.
There's also a lot of bats that are insectivores as well.
Right. And I think the North American bats, that's primarily what they do, is they eat insects.
Yeah.
Like, this part of the world, however, fruit bats are a big thing. Because, like, rotting or dropped fruit and all that other kind of stuff, they like to get up on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, a fruit bat is not small either, to be fair. Like, I wouldn't say it's anything close to this size, but it's definitely, like, the size of your Cocker Spaniel. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a small animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where things get funny. So, what if I told you that this Ahool, that, you know, most people talk about being mostly mammalian, some people claim that it's almost reptilian, like a pterosaur, but most of the time, it's either a big-ass bat or arguably a primate with wings. That's the other major way that people describe this thing. It's almost like...
We talking like Wizard of Oz flying monkeys?
Except the arms are the wings, not wings coming out of the back.
Oh, okay.
But basically, think of it like that.
A little funky, but okay.
Exactly.
I haven't jumped into this too much yet because you're still kind of giving us the down low here.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So...
Yeah.
Anybody got any major questions before I try to, like, get into what I consider to be probably the most notable reporting of this cryptid?
I already kind of asked about, you know, what it eat, you know, because, like, you mentioned people theorize that it eats fish, and I was like, bats don't eat fish. I found that a little strange.
Yeah,
I don't know. You got anything to say, Kaiden?
Yeah, with the one of the things when you were first introducing this thing, you mentioned it had like a wingspan of like what 14 to 40 feet.
That is the range of all of the different encounters and different things that I can pull up.
Right, and with such a wide range of sightings and all stuff, and with a wingspan that varies that much, are you sure it's not a couple different species of bat that people are just mashing into one?
Yeah,
It's
this
possible.
is a region of the world that has a lot of tropical bats in it, so I want to know. I guess we'll go into that after you read us this the only air quotes credible sighting that we have.
Yeah, because
Gotcha.
that could also, if it's multiple species, then that could also explain why different sightings, like the sightings vary so much, where some say it's more reptilian, while others say it's a primate with wings.
I gotcha. And, like, the other good thing, I'll go ahead and bring this up, is that Papua New Guinea is a neighboring island in the chain. I wouldn't say it's, like, right next door neighbor, but it's, like, one of the other big islands that something like this could possibly live in, and it's within flying distance of an animal. And they call that the ropen, or the boat breaker. Or I'm sorry, not the boat breaker. That's another cryptid. So like the ropen is called the demon flyer in Papua New Guinea. And they like to think over there that it is a cousin of the Ahool. But the thing is that the ropen is exclusively native to Papua New Guinea, where the overall Ahool can be seen anywhere from Australia all the way up to northern Indonesia.
That's quite a wide range for a cryptid.
Exactly.
I mean, I say that as if we don't constantly talk about Sasquatch, which is everywhere, which is all over the continental United States, Canada, fucking, there's Squatch variants all over the world,
Mm-hmm. Now, like...
Oh, by the way, sorry, Gaz, I just looked up, did a quick search and everything too. There are actually bats that do go fishing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Looks like they have the fishing bulldog bat in Central and South America. And then apparently there's also a species of bat around the Gulf of California that feeds on fish and crustaceans.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, awesome. Because, like, I do find them to be pretty interesting animals in general.
They are.
Oh, yeah.
So, but here's my question. Are there any species like that in the region of the world we're talking about today?
No.
No.
Yeah, I have no idea because I'm not good with geography at times.
I did look up a variety of different bats and stuff like that. And, like, I mostly did it via size. So, like, the Ahool is essentially 2 to 3 times the size of the next biggest known species of bat, which is the golden fox. That is, like, to this day, science's largest bat, and it is actually native to the Javan jungles of Indonesia, where most of these sightings do occur. Now, that's the thing, though. It's like you're talking, these people, these natives that have lived in this area for tons of years know what a golden fox is and have a word for that, but they have a different word for this big-ass bat. It's kind of a similar thing with, in Native American, like, oral traditions and stuff, they have words for monkeys and stuff like that, but then they have words for man, and then they have words for wild man with a bunch of hair on him that walks through the woods, They like to think of them as separate entities, at least in a linguistic sense. Which, to me, kind of denotes in their mind I can't be looking at the same thing that I thought I was looking at yesterday.
I mean, I guess there's always still room for misidentification.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, like, growing up in a deer hunting family, there's a concept called distance shrinkage. Alright? It's like when your buddy over here is like, damn, I shot me a 12-point buck, and then you guys go to track it down, and suddenly it's an 8-point buck. You know what I mean? When you actually get up close to the thing, it's a lot smaller than what you thought it was. So, a lot of that kind of stuff is possible, but let's go ahead and get into the actual report here.
All right.
So,
read it up for us.
I gotcha. So the most notable report of an Ahool comes from a Dr. Ernest Bartels, who was he was a researcher that was in West Java back in 1925. All right, so this is already an old report. At this point, it's 99 years old. Okay. Now, he was southwest of the Indonesian city of Bogor, where during the daytime, while he was exploring a waterfall area, he witnessed a giant bat-like creature fly overhead. But that was about it at the time. And then 2 years later, when he was staying in another area off of a local river, he awoke into the middle of a night by a similarly large flapping sound over his hut. However, he heard the long call of Ahool calling out into the night 3 times before it carried off into the distance. And whenever he went to wake his guide, and his guide was listening, he immediately said, that's an Ahool. It's something that we've been dealing with for a while. Now, I wasn't able to get a corroborated, like, report from this dude because of just, it's hard to find information about this area like that in my, like, from what I've been finding, especially older reports that are mostly written down and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, it's not like looking through 1920s stuff here in the United States.
Yeah.
Like, this is way out in the boondocks, you know what I mean? Like, they got to send multiple ships to go get the dude in the first place. So, to be fair, though, this is sourced from the Encyclopedia of Loch Ness Monsters, Sasquatch, Chupacabras, and Other Authentic Mysteries of Nature, written by Lauren Coleman.
Hey, my man!
Exactly. So that's where I think it is at least something where if a cryptozoologist that is known to be one of the top in the field of all time decided to put it in a book that he wrote back in his heyday in 1999, I think there's at least something, there's a little bit of credence to what it says.
Yeah, Lauren Coleman, he is like the record keeper of cryptids. He has the largest collection of like cryptid-related documents, artifacts, you know, stuff like that, like letters, reports, newspaper stuff, casts, you know, statues, art pieces, all that stuff. I know he's been trying to relocate the Cryptid Museum to a more permanent location. I don't know if he was fundraising for that last I checked.
Oh, I thought... Never mind. I do know, though, however, especially in the Dogman and in the Sasquatch scenes, Lauren Coleman's name holds a lot of weight.
Yes, it does.
Because he's done a lot of the legwork.
He pops up in a lot of places in cryptozoology. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, he weighs in on the most random shit, and you'll be like, damn, okay. He
Maybe
truly is just... He's everywhere, man.
Mm-hmm. Now, to this day, reported sightings on the subject persist. All right, through Indonesia, New Guinea, and Australia, where I was seeing people talking about their encounters with this animal, mostly nowadays in Australia, but I think it has to do with technology, where Australia is obviously the most technologically advanced out of most of those countries in the area, and the literacy rate and the adaptiveness to technology is much higher in Australia than in a lot of that oceanic area, right? So I think it's more accessible for Australians to come forward and talk about what they've said and get an actual written report put down than it is in Papua New Guinea.
I don't know too much about Papua New Guinea or Indonesia. Like, I've had a couple friends who live in Indonesia. But I know the majority of the population of the country mainly lives in this, like, the big cities.
Exactly.
So, like, in the regions that the Ahool was said to be sighted in, or, like, in the boonies, like you said.
Right. So,
I just don't want us to come off as, you know, us having the attitude, oh, well, this entire country is, you know, backwater and stupid. You know, it's just...
No, I bring it up for another reason, though. So, let me go ahead and shout out somebody who's probably never even going to listen to this. Forrest Galante, okay? One of the guys that's kind of come out as being one of the more out in the wild, out there actually trying to bring word to these endangered species all over the world, trying to run in and do more things with species thought extinct that turned out to not be extinct, and actually helping get the push for conservation areas to start to take over those areas. He did extensive, multiple expeditions into Papua New Guinea, not for the Ahool, but for the thylacine.
Oh, really?
Exactly. He believes that is Papua New Guinea in particular has the highest chance of the thylacine still existing, for what I believe is to be a very similar reason to why the Ahool isn't absolutely can't exist kind of cryptid. Whenever he goes out there, he's got to do multiple month expeditions where it's more or less similar to just backpacking through the freaking Alaskan wilderness, right? Mm-hmm. Technology, scant. You're using sat phones that barely get signal. The locals there only speak a language. There's not a real use for them to write in these languages, and they're low technology areas. So the literacy rate of people knowing how to use a phone is ridiculously low. The amount of people that come through those areas that have the ability to do real recording and documentation of the area is also very low and few and far between. So this is a region of the world that, even though man constantly lives in, the documentation of its history is still very scant.
I know, speaking of the thylacine, I remember we were discussing recently that somebody may have gotten a photograph of one.
Turns out to be a hoax. If we want to do a
thylacine
episode...
That was unfortunate.
And it does suck, because, like, he also, like, Forrest Galante actually went out and interviewed the person that took the photos, allegedly, and put his neck out there a little bit, you know what I mean? Well, it turns out they were fake, and it was brought to his attention, and he backtracked, you know what I mean? Like, who wants to sit there and try and defend something that's obviously a hoax?
That sucks, because, like, I think if we're talking about, like, credibility and, like, probability it's out there, I think there's a case to be made for the thylacine, because, I don't remember the proper scientific term for these species, but, you know, the seal calanth, there's, like, a pygmy warthog of some kind.
There's a crocodile, there's a caiman species in South America. But all these were animals that were believed to be extinct, and then there were enough eyewitness accounts of them to get scientists to go out and verify it, and sure enough, hey, there's still a population. And, like,
so
I think a part of it is...
I feel like the thylacine, you know...
So...
there's a chance, I think, out of any, you know, air quotes, cryptid species. And it's only really cryptid because it's allegedly extinct.
So my question, though, is if he's gone out doing these, like, multiple month missions looking for the thylacine and all that stuff, did he have any encounters with the Ahool then? Or...
Not enough to where I feel like he made a separate, like, video or separate account of such a thing. However, it's also clear to note, though, too, is that, like, unless you're specifically looking for this kind of a thing, you wouldn't be looking for the thylacine at the same time and in the same areas you would be looking for a bat.
Yeah, this is very true.
So, like, the other thing, though, is that, like, I'll give him some credit. He was able to track down a photo of a jaw of a quote-unquote strange dog that a local villager had as a hunting dog that was killed by one of their other local dogs in a fight. And they basically, like, I'm going to be real, they ate it. But they saved a part of the skull and took photos of it. And he's got a photo of the jaw. And guess what? It's a fucking match to a thylacine jaw.
Oh shit, for real?
Yeah, he's like, he goes, unless we get DNA testing out on it and I can't get a hold of the jaw because it's still in the hands of the owner, he goes, I'm 95% sure, based off of looking at it and how it compares to known thylacine specimen jaws, we've got a match. I don't know anything else it could be.
Interesting.
And so, like, that is really interesting, especially because we're talking about the same area of the world where this thing exists, and I think it poses the same problems for its discovery that the thylacine is currently facing. Because what would you do? Like, how am I going to go up to Animal Planet and be like, hey, I need like $500,000 so I can do a scientific expedition for a big fucking bat that we don't know exists or not? You know, he had to personally fund these expeditions. It's not like he got outside funding for a lot of it. You know what I mean? Which is also why that's kind of what he does with his extra ass money, is going out to try and locate and document the existence of the thylacine.
Mm-hmm.
But every time he goes out there, it's like $250,000
Yeah,
for like a small team.
Yeah, because you have to. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Transporting all that equipment into these remote areas, being able to keep your team safe, because there's all these, kind of sicknesses and diseases you got to inoculate against,
There's bad actors of every kind.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on. So, in my opinion, to be fair, that while this is a weird cryptid to talk about, I do think that there is a legitimate chance that this is not a cryptid in the sense that this is a flying monkey that eats somebody's kids, but it's a really big fucking bat that we didn't know existed. So, let's go ahead and move on a little bit. To date, the only reported documented sighting of this cryptid is the 1925 encounter. But it is important to note, like I said, like if people were to see this thing last week, the people that would have seen it are not the kind of people that have access to Reddit or, you know what I mean, any of these circles where they can go in and they can talk about what they did see or what. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think that's why we don't see much of that. And when we do see it, it's from people in Australia. Because those people do have access to that kind of stuff.
Over in Australia, hey.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you still would have heard, more about it. Because, I mean, you think back to, like, when the gorillas were still a cryptid. Like, we heard a lot about it from, like, the local groups around there. It just highly exaggerated what they could do. Sorry?
Exactly. And they do as well. Like, the locals do, to this day, say that they almost regularly see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, I think there's a couple of reasons why this doesn't get as much traction as other cryptids. And I think it's because not only is it basically just a bat on steroids, but there's a couple of different misidentification possibilities.
Yeah, we already talked about the golden fox. What are there other animals that?
Yes, there are other ones. So, the other one that people like to lean to is the Javan wood owl. Okay? Now, the biggest thing that people are like, man, the Ahool call could very well just be this owl hooting at night. Which, I will say, like, owls do kind of make a similar sound. However, the biggest issue with the hypothesis of it being a Javan wood owl is that there are multiple accounts of the Ahool traversing the ground instead of flying when it's being seen.
What's the name of this other animal? I'm just like look on like Google Images.
The Javan wood owl.
Okay.
Now, why does that make a difference? It's because when they are looking at the Ahool walking across the ground, its feet are pointing the opposite direction. Which is a common trait of bats. It's almost trait specific to the bat species.
Yeah, I could see how that would rule out the, the owl species.
So, now we're getting back into cryptid territory, okay? The third big theory that people are thinking is that, okay, we're in, like, basically Jurassic Park, right? A big fucking island that's a huge, jungle landscape. It's more or less evolution's playground, but it's also a time capsule. Because if a species that had been there for hundreds of thousands or millions of years was in a little evolutionary playground where its rules don't change very much, there's not a big reason for it to evolve to change with the changes in its environment. Mm-hmm. That's where this comes in. There is another less popular theory that surmises that the Ahool could be a species of thought extent pterosaur. However, the only animals we know of that have lineages that come even close to that time period are fish and reptiles, with the exceptions of some mollusks and crustaceans like horseshoe crabs, you know what I mean, the coelacanth, alligators, all that kind of thing. those are essentially what you would consider the grandpa on the block. You know what I mean? They haven't had to really evolutionarily change much, if at all, over the course of hundreds of thousands or millions of years. I find it kind of hard to believe if we can't find any plesiosaurs out there, which are in the ocean, which in my opinion would have a better chance of avoiding detection than a random island with a jungle on it. That's where I'm kind of like, I don't think it's a pterosaur, okay? But we'll get into the pterosaur idea a little bit later, because there is something I want to bring up, another cryptid that is, by all intents and purposes, one.
I know this one, Kangamato.
Yes. So, let's go ahead and we can go into it.
One of a couple of African dinosaur cryptids, actually. There's at least 3 of them, if I remember. One of them is Mokele Mbembe. Yep, which is a sauropod of some sort.
Yes.
I want to say there's like one that's like either a Triceratops or a Stegosaur. But don't.
I think it's a Stegosaur. I think I've heard of that. Like, because they're talking about it had like a walking lizard with dorsal fins and shit. Which I think that would be more in my mind a Stegosaur than it would be a Triceratops.
Hang on,
but
let me double check.
The Kangamato is actually, like, why I would be like, okay, they're probably, if they all think they're all seeing a pterosaur, this kind of makes sense. Because it's known as the breaker of boats, okay? Like, this thing will fly over the top of people's boats as they're going across rivers or they're going across lakes deep in the Congo, and it will swoop in and use its giant armored beak to punch holes in the boat. And, like, that's where it got its name. And so, in the Congo and shit like that, where I would say little to no scientific discoveries or anything like that can really be made consistently in the area due to all of its political upheaval, there's a chance. Because that ecosystem is so dense, and there is portions of it that we don't even know if man has been in a long time, let alone what they saw when they were in there.
Yeah, just
where I can see it.
The only issue I'd have with that, though, with it being like a what do you call it, pterosaur, is are there fossils of pterosaurs in the area as well? And
okay, here we go. All right. I've got quite a few what are called neo-dinosaurs by some. I'm going to say that I am saying this with a clumsy white man's tongue. There's Mbilu, which is in the Congo, and that's the stegosaur we were talking about. There's Amila Ntoka, which is also from the Congo. A horn animal, probably, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. And there's Nguma Monine, which is just a big serpentine animal with legs. There's also the Batagui. There's a lot of these seem to be in the Congo and the Central African Republic, I've noticed.
Yes, so, like, I will say that is a very cryptid-heavy area because, like I said, it's hard to get an expedition anywhere near that area when half the time there's people at war with each other.
Yeah, it's also home to, like, one of the densest jungles in the world.
Mm-hmm. And one of the most inhospitable ones, too.
Yeah.
Like, the Amazon ain't nice either. Let's not make that distinction, you know? But, like, the Congo is on a level of terrifying that I just, oh my god, I feel like I'd be stupid to even go anywhere close to it. And I think there was a dude on Joe Rogan that actually went in there and was talking about when he was a 19, 20-year-old hearing the legend, and he was basically a drifter anyway, kind of going from place to place, just exploring the world, being young, and he found his way into the Congo, and everybody was like, I mean, yeah, we've seen it, but why the fuck are you here looking for it? you know? And everybody thought he was crazy. You know, they're in the middle of a civil war and shit, and he's trying to get people to show him how to go into the woods so he can look for this thing. Now, with that being said, I feel like if you were to take the same idea and you were to put the guy in Papua New Guinea and you were telling him, hey, I'm looking for this giant motherfucking bat, people probably gonna look at you like you're crazy too. However, I do believe the political situations of New Guinea and the surrounding islands are a lot more stable than the Congo. Doesn't mean that it makes the Javan jungles any less dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially, like, when you're talking about just the amount of wildlife that is just not made for humans, right? However, I will say, I think the roe pen has a chance of being, like, you know, an actual related species to the Ahool because they do have very similar descriptions. And even the people of the area seem to believe that they are cousin species to each other. There are other bat-like cryptids across the world.
Is this on both sides? Like, do people in Indonesia believe the Ahool is related to roe pen?
And vice versa? It seems as though, like, I haven't been able to, like, the places that I have seen, like, when I went to go look at this kind of stuff, they seem to all come to that same conclusion that the locals believe they're cousin species. So, like I said, it's hard to find corroboratable accounts and interviews and stuff like that, whereas, like, you're looking for Bigfoot or Dogman, like, the shit's a dime a dozen. This is not so much the case. Like, I would love to find somebody out there that would be willing to come on and actually talk about their experiences with this cryptid, because we would be maybe one of the first people to actually get that shit on a recording since 1925. So, like I said, if you're listening to us from Indonesia and you want to actually come forward with a cryptid sighting, please message us or comment. We'll figure out a way of getting back to you. Now, there is one other major cryptid in the bat category that I do want to talk about, because I think this might segue into one of our next big topics here on the show. And that's the infamous Batsquatch, baby.
Oh, there we go. Now we're getting back into territory I'm familiar with, because this brings one of the most squatch-infested geographic regions of North America into focus again, the American Northwest.
And specifically Mount St. Helens, even though there are also a lot of reported sightings around Mount Rainier as well.
Thinker Thunker actually did I read one of Thinker Thunker's books, and he proposed that there is a kind of a corridor that is frequently used by squatches in that area.
And it would make sense.
I'll have to go pull my book out, and because I've got it saved on my phone, because it was like a Amazon book, you know.
Right. But I mean, there are a lot of people out there in the cryptozoology field that do look at these, like, sighting maps, and they do find corridors of travel. Like, that's where the major prevailing theory that Indiana and Kentucky are mostly Sasquatch highways rather than particular. I mean, yeah, we got ones that settle down in the area all the same, but the majority of sightings seem to be in line with the idea of a migration route, where they see them during certain times of the year, and then they'll see them, they won't see them for a hot minute, and then they'll suddenly come back, and then they'll disappear again. And then when you track these sightings by date, you can start to see a trail forming. Now, the Batsquatch, however, goes back to the 1980s eruption of Mount St. Helens.
It was 87, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah,
because that seems to be when the weird stuff really started to
happen.
I
was horrendously wrong. March 27th, 1980.
Okay. So, whenever that eruption happened, there was a lot of people that reported seeing Sasquatches running away from the area, on fire, all kinds of shit. but there was a sighting, but it wasn't really corroborated, of flying Sasquatches flying away from the mountain as well.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to be honest with you. I'm gonna be very skeptical of people saying stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
because
right.
Yeah, no, it's
because like there were like during the eruption of Mount St. Helens, there were relatively few people in the mountain area, and literally all of them were preoccupied with running for their fucking lives when that thing exploded. And it went so quick that like by the time the eruption began to the time that it overtook like the one of the Overwatch areas that was watching for the eruption, that was just like 7 miles away, it was like less than a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a horrendous thing, and like I said, it's like people barely made it out alive when they had like a head start on this thing. And there were, I mean, you have avalanches going all over stuff. You had ash clouds going everywhere. You had pyroclastic flows. I highly doubt anyone was like, "There's a Sasquatch running away." Huh. I better document this.
I will absolutely agree with you. Now, I will say that I believe that a lot of people that make this claim were saying they were on the northwestern side of the mountain. Instead of on the southern side of the mountain.
But the north side of the mountain is the side that collapsed.
Was it? Because I thought it was the south side of the mountain.
If I remember correctly, because I used to be fascinated with the whole thing.
Right.
The northern face of the mountain was is the side that collapsed. So if they were on the north side of the mountain, they were either dead or running.
Or apparently looking at Sasquatch.
In which case, they were going to be killed by the pyroclastic flows. Because I mean, that's where all the north. That's where the north side was. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna have to be honest. I really doubt there were people seeing flying Sasquatches and everything, especially too since there was even a helicopter in the air when this whole thing went down, and none of those people reported seeing flying, Sasquatches.
Flying animals. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I feel like a fucking 10-foot tall flying primate would be pretty easy to see from a helicopter.
I want to believe it because it sounds fantastical and amazing, but like, it's a lot. It's a lot harder to put stock into than just your average Sasquatch.
Yeah, because it's like like in the I think it's like the days and weeks leading up to the eruption, they had like helicopter tours that would take people out to go and view the thing, because it's like the entire north side of the mountain was bulging outwards. It's like, what the heck is going on with this thing?
Yeah, there was.
So it was attracting a lot of people that were fascinated by it. Yeah, and like I said, there was actually a helicopter in the air when they saw the whole thing, when they saw the eruption happen.
God, I'd imagine. I wonder how close it would be if you were in a helicopter over a volcanic eruption when that shit went off. Like, I can't imagine the shock waves wouldn't affect the helicopter.
Yeah, it was I think a good enough a ways away, like off to the side, that it was able to escape. But like this eruption, it was more of a triggered by like a landslide than an actual like explosion per se.
Uh-huh.
It's like
there
the
was
whole
a landslide first, and then the pyroclastic flows came after it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like they basically just saw the entire north side of the mountain just slip away, and then all of a sudden there was this the hot gases shooting out and everything. That's what it was.
All right. So like, let me look. No. This is what you're here for. So.
Well, I used to be
a little bit more.
I used to actually be kind of big into volcanology, to be honest, back when I was a little kid.
Right, because that shit was cool.
Oh yeah. Like, I even had like maps and all that stuff, like topographical maps of the Mount St. Helens area, and it was showing where like the all the flows happened and everything. I wish I still had them, but they're long gone by now. But yeah, and it was also pointing out where like the different things were, like the lookout center. Man, it was crazy stuff.
No, that is nuts, and the fact that like we're still waiting on a Yellowstone eruption kind of scares me.
I mean, it's not going to be as devastating as world ending as people make it out to me. It's going to be scary for sure, but like.
Well, also too, the caldera is actually moving underground, like, or the magma chamber is actually moving underground. So it's not exactly where the caldera is anymore. So yeah, when that thing goes though, I mean, it's
Isn't
probably
it like the world's last super volcano or some shit like that?
I don't believe it's the world's last super volcano, but it's like one of the few. But it is theorized that if that thing goes off, like the United States is going with it.
Right.
Like, I mean, just due to ashfall and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll gut the United States.
So, let me throw out something like this here, because I also am of the opinion that, like, okay, the Batsquatch 1980s sightings are a little goofy, and I don't really put much stock into people talking about, oh my god, I saw, like, pods of Sasquatches running off into the distance, all that kind of stuff. Like, you hear about it, but it's almost like, yeah.
There's never any sighting, just hearsay.
Yes,
like,
never.
And the thing is, like, this was a highly covered event, and there were boots on the ground there. I feel like we would have some written account by now if there was somebody who survived. Like, for instance, if we're talking about, like, people who were there that documented things, there's the photographer Robert Landsberg, very famously, who was just a few miles at the summit. He got killed by an ash cloud, and he protected his, camera film with his body. And when they found his body, they found the film, and those photos provided geologists with documentation of the eruption. There was also the amateur radio operator Gary Martin, who he was located a little further north of the observation post Coldwater 2.
Uh-huh.
And he was literally operating radio while it was happening. And his last statement was, "Gentlemen, the camper in the car that's sitting over to the south of me is covered. It's going to hit me too." And then the radio went silent.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like,
and then you had David A. Johnston. He was at the Coldwater Ridge Observatory. That's what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. He had just enough time to say, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it," and then gone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Damn.
Yeah, his body has never been found to this day. Mm-hmm. It just swept completely gone.
Yeah, it probably got torn up in the flow.
Mm-hmm. So let's wind it back a little bit, maybe to 1994. Okay.
All right.
This is the first account of a Batsquatch where somebody actually felt confident enough that they were going to put their name on it and actually talk to a newspaper. Okay. So this goes back to a man named Brian Canfield. All right. In 1994, he was a teenager and he was driving his pickup truck down the rural areas around Mount St. Helens. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently his vehicle suddenly stopped, kind of like stopped working, just puttered on out like an EMP or something happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And followed almost immediately by his car crapping out on the roadway, a quote-unquote tall, blue fur, yellow-eyed, winged, ape-like creature descended from the air down onto the road and just stared through the pickup truck window at Mr. Canfield. And for a few seconds they sat there and then he was like, "Oh shit, am I gonna die?" And then it decided it was going to just flap its wings and ascend and just disappear into the woods. And when it disappeared out of sight, his pickup truck started back up again. Now, like, that kind of phenomenon is something you do hear in Sasquatch stuff, like electronics not going right, going haywire, things like that. Now, a whole ass car, I've not personally heard that, but I think if you dig around far enough, you can find somebody saying that I was driving down the road and my car stopped working and then a Bigfoot came out and then I got freaked out and then when it left, the car started running. I don't think that's a out of the place claim when we're talking about the variety it claims that you can hear with its cousin species, the Sasquatch, right? Because with the Batsquatch, it is essentially, in all intents and purposes, basically ape Mothman, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about how big it is.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to say it's not what they think it is. There's no taxonomical animal anywhere close to that.
No.
I'm just curious though, as to like you said, it affected the guy's car. It's like, by what mechanism could it do that though? Is the problem?
The only thing that makes sense to me is electromagnetism.
But
that's the kind of shit that happened. Like, that's the only thing that would work.
But remember, this is like the early 90s. This is before electronics really made their way through cars and stuff. So you're talking about something that interrupted a chemical process in an engine and forced it to stop.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm sorry, if you put fire to fuel, like ignition to fuel and all this stuff, it's going to that process is going to start. Unless it severely fucked with the composition of the stuff in the engine, which, I mean, if it's putting out something like that, it'd have to be noticeable.
So I'm looking it up right now, and apparently the long and the short of it is that unless you are running a old diesel model vehicle, that is where the electronics are minimal enough to where you have a good chance of your car surviving an EMP. That's not entirely true for gas vehicles, and because electronics inside like ECUs and that kind of type technology has been around a little bit longer than I think we think. Now, like, I wouldn't say that, it's 100% or anything like that, because it does like vary from car model with how much electronics they had integrated at the time, all that other kind of stuff. But it does look like, for me looking at it right now in 10 minutes, it looks like that there is a possibility, especially in the 90s, of your car having an ECU in it, and therefore it would be affected by an EMP. Because, like, your ECU is the computer that's telling your engine to do all this other kind of stuff, and when that thing blows, you're basically messed up.
I mean, that's great and all, but I'm gonna be real with you, Jaster. I've never heard of cases where a squad showed up and then somebody's car just shut off.
Me neither. That's kind of where I was like, man, that's almost like a Mothman kind of thing more than a Squatch thing.
Also, too, if this thing's releasing an electromagnetic pulse that's, like, basically screwing the electronics of a car, wouldn't that basically mean that the car is dead at that point, not coming back?
Let me look.
Because it was my understanding, though, that with electromagnetic pulses, that's one of the things that happens. It fries the electronics. So if this thing was to swoop down and basically release an electromagnetic pulse, your stuff's not coming back online.
What I'm seeing is that funnily enough, apparently what they recommend if you really worry about EMP attacks is turning your garage into a Faraday cage, which that seems like prevention rather than a cure to me. So, like,
yeah, because that Faraday cage will block all all that stuff. But it's like if your car gets hit by an EMP, I don't think you're getting that car back. Honestly,
right. Well, I'm looking like what will run after an EMP attack, and it seems like the most likely things that would still work after an EMP would be short-range walkie-talkies, battery-operated radios, and 2 battery-operated radios. Seems to be the most likely thing. So, like what you guys are saying, like, I think it's like, that's goofy. But that is the first account where somebody was more than willing enough to put their name on an account. which we know with Bigfoot, that's a lot more likely than like other type cryptids, or like there are a lot of dogmen people that are like, I don't want my name put in here. You know what I mean? And there's plenty of people that stay anonymous in Sasquatch not attacks, but Sasquatch reports as well.
I'm going to say something funny because I just looked up too. Apparently, some things that like man-made things that can create like EMP events, gasoline engine ignition systems.
That's funny. Wait, so you're telling me the thing that's running my car has the ability to destroy my car?
Apparently not, because it's a generally I would imagine it's a weak one, but it's a gasoline engine ignition systems can create a train of pulses as the spark plugs are energized or fired. I would imagine it's relatively weak, but I also imagine your system that nowadays with the electronics in your car, they're at least somewhat shielded. But even back then, I mean that just goes to kind of show it a little bit, but
no, that's wild.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny that it's like, yeah, apparently when you fire your spark plugs, it can generate a bit of an EMP.
That's cool. Well, shit, the more you know. Boo-doo-doo-doo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, with that being said, Nona, no, we're not doing this. You're not doing this. She was wanting uppies, and then she started wanting to claw into my legs. Not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. So, to kind of round it all out, right? The existence of bat-like cryptids is almost as widespread as the idea of Sasquatch itself. And while there are a lot of things that point against some of the evidence with some of these encounters and cryptids, with the Ahool specifically and with its cousin like the Ropen, there's a certain air of mystery to these accounts and to these legends because of the technological barriers that are surrounding these areas that these accounts take place in. Yeah. And so, to me, that's what's leading me into thinking mostly that there might be something to what people are saying. Because it's also not like they're trying to turn it into a tourist destination, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not doing that at all. Like, they don't want people to come there and mess up all their stuff they got going on for them, you know? So, I think that is the part of the equation that leans the most credence to looking into it farther. Whereas with the Batsquatch and a couple of other cryptids, like, we're in an area and in a time in that part of the world that these events happen where you can feasibly corroborate or debunk a story based off of a little bit of Google or based off of just cross-referencing databases and other things like that. But the Ahool kind of stands against that tide because there just isn't that much going on in those realms of science in that part of the world. And hopefully maybe we can find something to either corroborate or disprove this legend, or maybe we might be discovering a bat species in the next couple of years that's twice as large as the next one in its caliber.
I'm very curious about, Ahool now, and its existence as like a species, or its possibility of existing as a species. I'm interested in that. Quite so.
And hopefully the traction kind of picks up on this cryptid because it is so weird, but it is also in a part of the world where trying to find eyewitness reports and people that are willing to come in and talk, that's a hard one to run with, and hopefully that starts to change. But with that, guys, I think that wraps up our latest episode of KOR Live. So if you guys like what you hear and you listened all the way to the end, please like, comment, leave us a subscribe, the whole 9 yards. And if you ended up not liking with anything you hear, please let us know why, and we can work on it into the future. And if you want to hear more of us, we got our social links and our Spotify links in the description. So, with that, we got to push on off from Jakarta because this is getting late. And man, I'm wanting to get some bananas on the way home, guys. That's really why we came over here. I wasn't going to miss that shit.
I don't know. I kind of want some, I don't know.
They got all kinds of shit up here,
Yeah,
bro.
I don't know. Can we at least get a meal before we push up? There's lots of good food here.
And what's wrong with the fishing pole?
Maybe I want to try Indonesian cuisine.
Okay, I got you. Don't worry about it. Anthony Buntain, or Anthony, or no, I can't
Anthony
remember.
Bourdain.
And what sucks is I also knew a chef whose last name was Buntain, so I get them mixed up all the damn time, and it sucks.
Good job.
Sorry, bud. Sorry, bud. If you ever listen to this, I'm sorry. But we're going to go ahead and head on out, push on out, and get ourselves some grub before we do so. And thank you all for listening. Y'all have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy.